All right, we're going to go on to Chapter 2 then. As it says in this chapter, you jump right in and you create some basic model classes for products and categories. We're going to create these using the entity framework code first. There's going to be some stuff in here that's just going to look different because we haven't done it this way before. If you look up on the screen right now, imagine that we were in Management Studio or the Server Explorer, and we went in and we told it to create a new table. You know how to do that, right? So you create a new table, then we went down into that lower area and we did ID, int, and we said it was a primary key. Then we did name, and we said it was a varchar. Description, we said it was a varchar, etc. Does all that make sense? That's basically what we're doing here. So let's talk about what's different. All right, we're going to add a model and put this in just a second. All right, but first of all, if you look up on the screen here, notice this. There's a question mark there. See that? I've got it in blue. What that means is it's possible that that isn't set. So even though it's an int, that will allow for nulls. All right, which typically you wouldn't have with an int. All right. This virtual, we're going to get into it later, but basically what it's saying is that we are going to link the product table with the category table. All right? Again, I'm just trying to make it pretty simple here. So what I'd like us all to do, please, we're all here. Close a bunch of these. All right, we're all right here. And what I want us to do is to go over to Models, right mouse click on the folder that says Models, and choose Add. And there's two ways you can do this. Look up on the screen, please. First is the hard way. I don't know why you'd want to do it this way, all right, but you can. All right. What we want to do is create a new class, so we can go to New Item, and we can peruse our way down and find class in here. And we'll find it eventually, all right? We can do that, which is fine. Or we can do it the easy way, which is what I recommend. Just right mouse click, choose Add, and go down to the bottom where it says Class. That's the easiest way to do it. All right? And you'll notice that it says class1.css. We want to keep the .cs, or the cs.css. We want to keep the .cs in there, and we want to call this product with a capital P. Product, not products. We will have products in the product table. Does that make sense? All right. So we right mouse clicked on our models folder. We chose Add, and we went down to the bottom and chose Class. And now we've got here product.cs. All that makes sense? All right, click Add. And then notice if you look in here, we have this, which we didn't have before. Product.cs. All right. And a couple things about this. First of all, do you notice how the stuff at the top, those 4 using statements, can you see how they're gray? The system is letting us know that it's not using any of those. We could literally get rid of them. For now, at least, we'll leave them in there. It's not a big thing. All right? The namespace, you may or may not remember this from the C# class. Where we are right now is we're under the baby store and we're under the models folder. So our namespace is babystore.models. Does that make sense? It's kind of telling us, for lack of better words, where we live. All right. So we've got public class product, and I'm just going to put in the stuff as they show it in the book there. Oh, first, just so you see this, I don't know if this is a shortcut or not. You tell me. Okay, I can type in public int ID get set. I can do all that stuff, right? Or I can type in the word prop, P-R-O-P, and hit tab twice. See what it does? Look on the screen. Do it yourself. type in PROP, all in lowercase, and hit tab twice. So you've got to go back in there and change this, for example, to ID. I don't know which is faster, to type in prop tab tab or to just type them in manually. It doesn't matter, but what I'm trying to show you is that's literally what's referred to as a code snippet that we're throwing in there. All right. It doesn't matter. So again, I can take the next one and say public string name. But then I've got to add all this stuff. Get, set. Okay? So you can do it either way. It really and truly does not matter. But let's just get this filled up. All right? The other thing is if you really want to do it this way, you can also just highlight the line above it and paste it in. So you can, there's a bunch of ways that you can add stuff, then just change it accordingly. Make sure when you put the int in there, you put in int question mark as they show it in the book. Okay, this is going back to something that we did last week. Why do you think it's giving me an error right there? What haven't we defined yet?
Don't we have to like link it to the thing up there next to like put the dot thing and connect them?
No, what I'm telling you is what haven't we created yet? How about a table name category? Remember we did this the other day when we were wondering which ones to put in first, and we were getting that error when we were doing the parts and all that other stuff. It's the same type of an idea. Now, look on the screen if you would, please. Since we don't need these, I could remove them, or if I take my mouse and I put it up here, I get this little light bulb, and it says using directory is unnecessary. So I can click on there, and it'll say, do you want to remove it? So I can do that too. All right. I don't think that it's bad to keep them in, so I'm just going to leave them there. If you want to get rid of them, get rid of them. It really and truly does not matter one way or the other. All right. Let's go, and I'm going to look on page 14 here, because what the author does on that page is explains to you what all these different fields are doing. ID is primary key. Typically, when you do this in ASP.NET, your primary key will always be named ID, and it'll always be an int. Are there exceptions? Of course there's exceptions. But most of the time, that's how it'll be. Name, the name of the product, description, the text description of the product, price. Why do we make price a decimal? Dollars and cents, right? You wouldn't want to make that an int. Category ID, notice what it says there. It's going to be a foreign key. You all know now what a foreign key. We have allowed this to be empty by setting the type to int question mark. That means that a product does not need to belong to a category. Why would that be? If it's a brand new product, you might not yet know what category it belongs to. Does that make sense? I would think eventually you'd want all products to be put into a category. I would think so. But then what if you get a product that could go into multiple categories? All right. So the last one that's in there, the one we had the problem with, notice what it says there. It is a navigation property. All right? It says they contain other entities that relate to this entity. So in this case, the property will contain the category entity that the product belongs to. Again, that's a long explanation, but if you look at the last sentence in there, it says navigation properties are normally defined as virtual, so they can use what's called lazy loading. See this? I believe, I could be wrong, but I think the opposite of lazy loading, is called eager loading. With lazy loading, what it means is the system does not literally load something into memory until it needs it. That's the lazy part. All right? So you might be running a program and you might run all sorts of different stuff on a database, but you don't need that category for whatever reason. So it won't be loaded. But once you need it, it will be loaded. All right? I don't know if that was a great explanation or not. There they say you can do the tab, the prop tab. I already told you that. So next it says complete the model class. Now we'll add a category class. All right. So again, bottom of page 14. So we're going to do the same type of thing. We're going to come back here, right mouse click on model, go to add, go down to class. This will be category. All right, click add. There it is. All right, so now I'm going to put in those, and there's what, 3 fields it looks like. All right, if you would for just a second, stop what you're doing and look up on the screen here. Notice no errors, and notice also after I save this, when I go back to product, my error there went away. They are, for lack of better words, they are going to be linked now. All right, I'll let you put that in, then we'll come back and we'll talk about everything that's in here. All right, so looking at the bottom of page 14 and going up to the top of page 15, again, notice, if you look up on the screen, do you see how system.collections.generic is not grayed out? That means we're using that one. And we're using that, as you probably guess, for our iCollection that's down here. All right, so we could remove the other ones, or you can leave them. It doesn't matter. ID is the primary key. Name is the category name. Then look at the top, please, of page 15. products, a navigational property that will contain all the product entries belonging to a category. The reason that this is important is later we'll write a loop where we're able to say, okay, if I give you a category, show me all the products that are in that category. Does that make sense? It'll be the collection of properties that exist in that category. All right? Now, everything we've done so far is fine, but technically the system, yes sir, right here. Technically, right now, the system doesn't know this is a database. Did you all hear me? The system really has no clue that this is a database. Why? Because all we've done is created two classes. We've linked them, but the system doesn't know that. All right? So it says here, the database context, which is what we're going to work on next, is the class that coordinates entity framework functionality for a data model. Create a new folder that's called DAL. That is short for Data Access Layer. You don't have to do that. It would literally be okay to put this right in the model, in the models folder. But most people do it this way. So again, we're going to do it that way. So we're going to come in here and we're not going to right-click on models. We're going to right-click on the name of our project up here, which is Baby Store. So right-click there, choose Add, and choose New Folder. All right, and there it is down there. And we are just going to type in capital D, capital A, capital L. And it'll reposition itself right under the controllers after you've hit enter. All right. This file that we're going to end up putting in here right now, this is what's going to basically start to tell the system that this is a database. Was that for your thing you missed last week?
Yeah.
Okay. So, Matt, what I want you to do is to go up to the top of your project here.
Okay.
See where it says Baby Store? Right mouse click on there. And then choose Add and choose New Folder. Not Add ASP.NET folder, just New Folder. Right there, like that. Once you do that, it'll create a new folder and it'll put you in there. And then type into that new folder for a name. Type in capital D, capital A, capital L. And then once you do, it'll be right here. Then you'll be right where we are. That's what you missed. DAL. That stands for Data Access Layer. Everybody's there, correct? Now we're going to right mouse click on that folder we just added. Choose Add. Choose Class down at the bottom like we just did. All right. And we are going to call this Store Context.cs. With a big S and with a big C. Once you've done that, you hit enter, it should look like this. Please just add the 2 lines of code that are shown about a third of the way down on page 15. Public DB set product, products with a get set. And I know you're going to get an error. That's good. Public DB set category. Categories with a get set. All right. Type that in. If you get those 2 errors, just stop right there. We're going to get rid of the errors right now. Everybody has that? Everybody has the errors? All right, if you look up on the screen here, we have two choices. We can literally, as they show here in the handout or on the PDF, we can type in this line, using system.data.entity. That'll fix it. All right, but rather than doing that, we can take our mouse, we can put it on here. Again, we get that little light bulb, see it? And it says, hey, you're missing a namespace. Click there, and it says you probably want system.data.entity. That is what we want. So boom, it put it in for us. All right. Now it says, hey, there's another problem here. I don't understand where product is, and I don't understand where category is. Please look up on the screen, because this has to start making sense to you. All right? It's because this store context knows everything that's living here. Does that make sense? But the product and the category, they're living in here. You understand? So the system doesn't know that. Again, if I take my mouse and put it over either one and click the down arrow, it says you want to add using babystore.models. See that? That's what we want to add. Remember babystore.models? Please look up on the screen. Remember babystore.models? Remember babystore.models? That's what we're adding. Does that make sense to everybody? It's kind of like, and you're shaking your heads yes, and I believe you, but it's kind of like if you remember when we started to split up and we put our CSS into its own folder, and you sometimes had to say like CSS/ or whatever. We're doing the same kind of thing here. All right. Before we go on, I just want to say this. This, again, is shown here. Please look up on the screen, because this is important junk right here. So this is about halfway down on page 15. The context class derives from system.data.entity. That's why we had to put that using statement in there. One of the things under using system.data.entity is DB context. It's a keyword basically. There is typically one context per database. What it's doing is it's letting us know what tables are going to be in our database. Does that make sense? If we come back later and decide we want to add another table, we're going to have to add another .cs file. We're going to have to go into this file and add it in here. Does that make sense? Each DB set property is known as an entity set, and each typically corresponds to a table in the database. The code DB set product tells the entity framework to use the product class to represent a new row. So it's going to start creating a table based off of this. And the same thing for the one that is in, the DB set category. All right. If you have the PDF, does everybody have the PDF open of the book? I don't know if you guys opened your PDF or not. All right. Now, what I'm saying is if you look up on the screen here, you're either going to have to manually type in what's in blue right there, or you're going to have to open up the PDF and copy it in. The chances are if you're a fast typist, you're going to screw it up. How do I know that? Because that's what I do. And that's what I would imagine you do, unless you really take your time. So I just highlighted all of it here, and I'm going to do a right mouse click, and I'm going to choose copy. Now, please look up on the screen here. Everybody, just for a second. Again, make sure that the web config file you open up is the one at the very bottom. You don't want to open up the other one. It's not that it wouldn't hurt to open it up, but if you put it in there, it would be wrong. All right, so I've got my web.config right here. Now the author says, now we have a database context and some model classes, so we need to tell the entity framework how to connect to the database. Add a new entry to the connection string section. So in here, you've got to find connection string. Do not remove the one that's already in there. That one is the default. But go right underneath that, hit enter, and paste in, or you're going to have to type it in, everything that's shown there down toward the bottom of page 15. I'm going to make this a little smaller so we can see all of it here. This is the one that we just added if you look up on the screen here. So what did we say? We're adding a new thing in there called store context. We added store context before. All right? The data source is it's going to be on our own local machine. See this? It'll be on our own local machine. All right? And when we create it, it's going to be called babystore.mdf. All right? So they go over it a lot better than I just did, but if you look on the bottom of the page here, on page 15, it says this new entry tells the EF, or the entity framework, to connect to a database named babystore.mdf in the app data folder of our project. It says I've chosen to store the database here so it can be copied at a later time. And then he says there's an alternative. We don't care because we're not doing the alternative. All right. On the top of page 16, top of the page, the author says here, the other existing connection string is used for the database that was automatically created. That's the authentication database. Everybody hear me? Very rarely, if ever, do you want to touch that thing. I would recommend, unless you really can come up with a really good, compelling reason, never touch it for any reason. And the only reason, again, I'm telling you that is I've done it before. And I'm like, well, I'm just going to make this minor change. Then the whole thing's screwed up and you can't use it anymore. If it gets screwed up, it's almost not repairable. You've been warned. All right? Okay. It's also worth noting that you don't need to technically define a connection in web.config. If you don't do so, then Entity Framework will use a default one based on the context class. Now, all you're doing is you're giving the system information that it will need rather than having the system find it itself. It's recommended that you always do it this way. All right, one thing before we go on. We're on the middle of page 16. Please, if you would, go back to your project if you're not there and click your double disk icon. Now we have saved everything. It's important as you're going through here to save often. All right? Okay, adding controllers and views. Again, down on the bottom of here. Now, don't do this yet. Everybody hear me? Don't do this yet. Because I want to show you something that is actually shown in here. In many ways, this is quirky. This is quirky software. I came from a world where I learned PHP first. And to me, PHP is another language that you could use just like you can use ASP.NET. PHP is much more straightforward. It's harder to screw things up. It's real easy with this package to screw things up. Look at step 1. You say, oh, just run the program. No. All right? What I want you to do next, because we're about to go in and add a category controller and some views, please go back to here and click Build and click Build Solution. Click Build in your menu, then Build Solution. How do you know if it worked? Look on the bottom of the screen. There's my output dialog box. And sooner or later, I think, it's going to give me some information as to whether or not it worked. But do you do a build solution? All right, build solution. There it is. Shouldn't have done it twice. Build succeeded. See that? Now, if it fails, I would say don't go on. I've already done that. It failed. I'm like, well, maybe it'll fix itself later. It doesn't. All right, so try to see if you can figure out what the problem is. Ask me, ask somebody else around you, or whatever. All right, so we did step 1. Step 2, right-click now on the controllers folder and choose Add Controller. So, we're here. There's our controllers folder right here. It's alphabetized. So we're going to right mouse click. Just so you know, if you look on the screen, I would recommend, if you got stuff that's open and you're not using it, close it. It makes it much easier to work with this stuff. Okay, to me, now the only thing that's open is controllers. It's much easier for me to see the one I should be working with. If I've got everything open, it gets a little bit all over the place in a hurry. All right, so I'm going to right mouse click on there and choose Add Controller. It's the folder you want to right mouse click on. All right, and it's Add. Notice the top one here, Controller. You don't want class here. A controller is a class, but it's a special kind of class. So we right mouse clicked on the controllers folder, we chose Add, and then Controller. All right. Now, I'm going to give you the dime store tour. I could sit and read this stuff to you, but I'm not going to. If you choose MVC5 controller empty, that's what you get. An empty controller where you basically got to fill everything in yourselves. Okay? If you choose MVC5 controller with read-write actions, that's what it's going to have. All right? The only 3 that we're going to be concerned with are these 3. Please look on the screen. We're not doing anything in this class with Web API. So it's either going to be empty, or it's going to be this, that's going to have read, update, delete, and list entities, or it's going to do this from an entity framework data context. They're very similar to one another. You're going to have a chance to see both of them in action as we go on. All right? So it says in the Add Scaffold one, choose the MVC controller with views option. It's the same one that I have chosen on the screen. So click Add. Then as they show on the top of the next page here, on page 17. All right? And for the model class, notice if I click the down arrow, it gives me a whole bunch of stuff. Some of these are mine. Some of these are system things. We want to choose here category babystore.models. All right? Then our data context class, well, it's going to be hard to screw that one up, right? It doesn't let you choose the one for logging in. It just lets us choose the one that we created. If we didn't have one, we'd have to create one now by clicking the plus sign. All right, but we've got that one, so that's what we want. Now you can say, well, ours says application DB context. This one says store context. That's an interesting one because I want to make sure that we are doing it right. Data context. Why didn't it come up with store context? Check if I use less. Yeah, I know that. I don't, well, let's see. I'm going to see if I can type in here. Store context babystore.dal. I'm going to put it in manually like that. I don't know if it'll take this or not. All right. Don't worry for now about the async controller actions. Make sure all of these are checked. Now, let's talk about quickly what all of these are checked mean. The first one says generate views. That is going to generate in this file for you an insert view, an update view, and a delete view. You hear that? It's going to automatically put that stuff in there for you. There won't be any code in it, but you'll have empty methods. You'll want that. The next one says reference script libraries. That means that everything that's in that scripts folder will be available to the system. All right, and the last one says use a layout page. It's going to use our layout page. It says leave empty if you're going to use the default one, which is what we're doing. Then finally on the bottom, see where it says this? You have to always, always, always make sure your controller has the word controller at the end of it. Remember when we first started, we said home / something or other? Remember that? That was actually home controller. The system knew because it was named home controller. Look, there it is. Home controller. All right? Now, I don't know. I'm looking at this, and I'm not feeling good because that's not lit up. So I may have to come in here and either new context data type. I don't know. I'm either going to have to add one. I'm going to try to add one. It's funny because when I did this, I did it during the summer. Everything worked like a charm. But I'm going to click plus in here anyway, and I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to type it in. What I'd recommend is you don't do that. Watch me do it first, and let's see if it works or not. All right, so I'm going to type in here store context baby store .dal like that, and we'll add that context. There it is. The ad is open. Click add. It says there was an error running this. The context type store context baby store .dal could not be generated or located. So that's saying in here, I'm going to just cancel this for now. There's store context. It's not recognizing it. I don't know why. So I'm going to try it the other way. Add, controller, views, add, model class, category, data context. We'll try to add this one. I didn't think that was right. Maybe it is. Categories controller, click add. If it's screwed up, we'll know pretty quick. It might work, but it might still be screwed up. So we'll, like I said, we'll know it pretty quick. All right. Click add. It says on step 5 we did that. Now it says examining the categories controller class and methods. All right. Again, if it's screwed up, we're going to know this fairly quickly. So we just did all this stuff. Again, we had to change ours right there. Click add, boom. The newly scaffolded categories controller.cs. First thing to check, there's categories controller.cs. It did make that. Well, that's a start. All right. It contains several methods for performing CRUD operations. You know what CRUD is. Hopefully you're understanding why we did the database stuff first, even if it was a review. All right. So let's look at that. We've got create. We've got view. We've got delete. So it looks like we've got stuff in there. All right. Now, we're going to go over some stuff, and I think if you're like me, well, I feel sorry for you, but if you're like me, when we go over some of this stuff to begin with, it's going to sound a little confusing. All right? Whoa, that's what it is. Where is that? Just a second. Assembly scaffolding categories contain several methods. Yes. Code. All right. This line that's in here, this is what concerns me because it's not the same line they're showing in the book. The one they're showing in the book is private store context DB equals new store context. The one that we have is private application DB context DB equals new DB context. See the difference? All right. Like I said, I did this during the summer. I've got notes all over the place in this book, and if something didn't work, I marked it up. So I'm not sure what's going on, but hopefully we'll be able to work our way through this. All right, what it says is happening, though, in that line that you see in blue right there. It says it is instantiating or creating a new context object that the controller can use. All right, the new categories controller contains a bunch of methods. Please look up on the screen. Okay, I'm asking you a question right now. This is back from the days of AWD1111. What's the difference between a get and a post? I don't want to go on until somebody at least tries to answer it. How about this? A get is like what kind of database operation? A select. Why? And it doesn't change it. A post is like an insert or an update or a delete because it can conceivably change it. All right? What we're going to end up doing sooner rather than later is when we want to add stuff to our database, okay, we're going to run the program and it's going to bring up a form that it's created for us that it's going to have all these database fields in there. Everybody hear me? When it brings that up, that's a get. When you put information in there and you tell it to save, that's a post. It's actually going to do both operations. So, if we look here, again, I'm back in the book, top of page 18. The author says, the index method is used to return a list of categories here. All right? So what is it doing? It's telling us to use that DB object that we just created, dot categories, dot to list. Means that, for lack of better words, show them all on the screen. If we run this now, it's not going to show a flipping thing because we don't have any categories yet. We're going to have to create some. All right? And again, that's a get. Then it says the details method finds a single category from the database based on the ID. There's where ID becomes important. Because if we bring it here, so let's play computer for a second. All right? It's going to come up and we're going to have something here where we will be able to search for a product. Does that make sense? Eventually what we want to have is a drop-down list of all our products. We search for the one we want, we choose it, boom, it shows us all the products under that category. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? All right. But when we first do it, there won't be any products yet if we run it. Or what if we leave it empty? What this says in English, if you look on the screen here, what this says is, hey, if you didn't put anything in there, just return me back to where I was. Don't give me an error. Just return me. All right? And then, if we get this far, we put in something. It may not have anything yet. So let's say that I put in one thing. Let's say that I put in clothes for my baby superstore. Now it comes in there, and I don't have a drop-down, but I've got a text box, and I type in there toys. There is no category named toys. So it's going to come back, and it's going to return, now it's going to return not found. All All right? If it gets down to here, not only did I enter a category, but I entered a category that's a valid category. So that's what it's going to return. All right? So that was long, but just so you see this, it says the get version of the create simply returns the view. It says this may seem a little strange at first, but what it means is that it returns a view showing a blank HTML form so you can create a new category. What do you do when you create? You're making a new one. All right? Now look on the screen, because this is the first time I think probably you've ever seen this. The opposite again of a get is a post. So the other one here literally has in there, you put a designator, HTTP post, like that. So this is the one that's going to run. This is the one that's going to run when we actually make an entry and we get the information. You know, we do the create and we tell it, boom, put it into the database. All right? So the one that you do, the first one that we saw here that just has the comment that says get, that does not allow us to change anything. We can only see stuff. This one allows us to change things because it's a post. Now, notice it says HTTP post. And if you look up here, these don't say HTTP get. You can type that in if you want. But if it doesn't say HTTP post, it's automatically an HTTP get, so people don't type it in. All right? Then when you look in here, there's other stuff. Does it make sense when you look right, see the line that's in blue on screen? Look at the line right below it. That's doing what it can do. All right? For example, they want to make sure when you're creating that you have the ability to be a creator. Only an administrator should be able to see this. Does that make sense? Because they're about to create a new product or a new category. I guess it's a new category. But I shouldn't be able to do that. Because if I could, then I'd be able to go in. Hell, if I can create my own categories, I could create my own products. All right, I could have a new car and I could say it's $1. Hey, that's what it says in there. You got to give it to me for $1. So these are things that administrators are going to have to be being concerned with. Does that make sense? Now notice it says here, if model state dot is valid. That might be a little confusing. That's saying check everything that we want to put in for a new category. Remember this? We said way back, not way back, but back on pages 14 and 15 that a category has to have an ID and a name. All right. What if we put in something that's invalid? Then this won't be true. This only says if it's valid, add it. All right. It's exactly what it's saying. This is the key thing. Somebody tell me, you want to guess? What is that line doing? Where? To the database. Then, after you've done it, you just return them back to where they were. Now, you could give them a message, too, that says category, toys has been added. Something like that. All right. Now, maybe I didn't do as good a job as they did, but I hate reading out of books. So on page 19, about a third of the way down, that's what I just explained to you. So if you'd rather read their explanation than mine, all right, there's where it is. When you're showing details, it says the get version of the edit method is identical to the details method. What's edit do? Edit has to bring up whatever product I tell it I wanted to edit, right? Okay, so the get will bring it up, but the get won't allow me to change it. It'll be the post that allows me to come in and change it. And again, now Tony knows what that stands for. All right? And then finally, they've got the delete. Same kind of thing. The get will bring it up. The post will allow me to literally delete that. I'm going to say this one more time, and please shake your heads yes if you know, does everybody understand this stuff? CRUD operations are only going to be done by an administrator, never by an end user. In fact, if you follow the steps they tell you to follow in this book, you end up creating yourself as an administrator. All right? Now, if you look on the top of page 21, I'm not going to read to you. I don't think you want me to, and you know what? I don't want to. But what the author is saying right here is, this is the way that ASP.NET does it. Not saying, hey, this is the way it does it. Do you like that? It's just saying this is the approach they decided to take for this. Okay? All right. So let's go back to the code here, and I'm on page 21. It says the auto-generated index file should look like this. Let's see if it does. So where I want to get into is down here. If you look on the screen, we just created what? We just came in here and we created our categories controller. Yes? Look down on the screen, please. Up on the screen. There's categories. So it created for us a create, a delete, a details, an edit, and an index. They want us on page 21 to go to the index. And it says here, view bag title equal index. We've got an H2 tag with index in there. We've got a P tag, create, new, and delete. We've got a table. This is all created for us because we did the scaffolding. All right. And here is the key thing. Look on the screen, please. This. Do you notice what we're doing is we're going in and out here? This line right here, that's C#. Then we're dropping back into HTML. Then we're having another line of C#. Then we're dropping back into HTML. Then 3 lines of C#. Then we're dropping back into HTML. Every time we want to go back into C#, we have to preface that with the @ sign at the beginning of that line. All right? And if what we could have done here, we could have done an @ sign right here and then put curly braces in here rather than 3 @ signs. So there's a lot of different ways that you can write the same thing in here. But this is going to list all of those details for us. Now, there aren't any details to list yet. We haven't made anything. All right? So they break it down on page 22. And I'm sorry, this is taking longer than I thought, but I want to make sure you get it, or as best as I can explain it to you. Here is the breakdown of the code in the view. All right? So they're explaining everything, even the line I missed at the top that says model I enumerable. What I enumerable means is it'll hold any type of data. That's what the enumerable means in this case. All right? Then they're setting the title. Already mentioned that. Then they've got these action links. What are those? All right? These things that are right here, they're literally referred to. They've got a name. They're called HTML helpers. They write some code for you behind the scenes. All right? As it says, it's going to create a hyperlink to the create view with the text set to create new. All right? Then we've got this display. And what this says is, what do we want? It says to display the name field, all right, which is currently called name. All right. Then loop through and show us everything that's in there. So again, you might say, I really and truly don't get it. Let's try this. Look on the screen, please. Everybody. This is where we'll find out either it's going to work or it's not going to work. Run the program. All right. Once it runs, now notice we're in categories. See that? It's loading, and sometimes this will take up to a half a minute to a minute. All right, now it's giving me an error. That is not a good thing. That means either, somehow I must have skipped something. I didn't see anything I skipped. Review, return DB categories, but it doesn't like what we're doing. Yeah. So what I'm going to do between now, screw a test tomorrow, we're going to have a test Wednesday. All right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and redo this myself, and if I find out where I messed up, I'll let you know tomorrow. Okay. Now, that said, let's go and let's switch gears. In fact, it's 2:49, so let's take another break. Let's come back at 3, and then we're going to look at a couple of those stored procedures. All right? I'm not going to tape that, though.